Okay, Mr. LaFond. He's not a Giants fan, don't worry. Uh, we're talking about the Osprey book I had done in Florida, the book about the Second Seminole War. Let's talk about the Seminoles in general. You had some interesting things to say about them in the video that has now gone into the black hole of, wherever they go. So we'll try again about the origin of the Seminoles and, the concept, the very nuanced and complex concept of these Indian tribes.
Uh, so I believe it was 3 Seminole Wars. I'm interested in that book because it's the one I've hardly read anything about.
Okay. The Osprey books, by the way, are the greatest books ever made. Got a lot of pictures, so you don't have to do too much reading. And they cover the whole everything from reenacting to wargaming to model making, and really and history, really cool stuff. Anyway, we're talking about the Second Seminole War Osprey book that I covered in Florida.
So there are types of hybrid tribes in North America. There's a group in Canada that actually fought their own insurrection against the British Empire in the 1800s that were descended from Frenchmen and Englishmen who hunted bison, and their Indian wives who made the pemmican for the Hudson Bay Company.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, I forget the name of this tribe. Then there's the Susquehannock and the Delaware, both highly mixed race tribes with lots of mixed European culture. Stockbridge Indians is one. The Mingos, that was essentially a mixed tribal refugee group. The Seminoles they fall into that category. The people that were originally in Florida, there were 3 language groups. The dominant group was the Timucan, who successfully resisted the Spanish invaders and their Anglo successors for over 200 years. And we'll cover their plight with the Seminoles. But the Seminoles came from the Carolinas, which includes Georgia. Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina were originally all just Carolina. The term Seminole comes from the Spanish Cimarron.
Like maroon.
Right. So the first time, Cimarron means runaway. So maroon's a term that's generally used by French, Spanish, and English to indicate tribal African runaways who immediately
go to
see
the hills.
terrain that they're used to in West Africa and just run for the jungle and never even bother working on the plantation.
Yeah,
okay?
good for them.
So when Captain Morgan invades Panama City, there's 2 groups of indigenous people. The pure Amerindian tribal people, actually I think they killed some of his men. Some of his men got in a line and did some stuff to him.
Right.
As they were going overland to Panama
pirates.
City. But then the Cimarrons helped him in his expedition. And they were referred to as the Cimarron Indians in some cases. So these are people that were escapees of various racial groups and who had assimilated to some extent with tribal Amerindians. And these are the first record of these that I've found in North America was in the Carolinas. It's between 700 and 1700 and 1714. I found an illustration of a chief of the Seminoles who was described as booming with his stentorian voice out in the forest, yelling about how powerful he was, and he considered himself like the thunder. And the illustration of him done by the person who met him looks almost exactly like Liam Neeson, the actor that played Rob Roy. Now, so it would make sense. The Carolinas was a center for runaways. People ran away from Virginia plantations.
Yeah, the Carolinas.
Predominantly people of Scottish, Irish, and English descent, but also of African. And they would mix with tribes that had been displaced. In the Carolinas, the Siouan tribes, there were 3 of them that were displaced by the English, go to Canada. The 3 Iroquois tribes, you imagine how far away the Sioux people were.
Yeah.
From their
You said they
people,
traveled
right?
huge distances on
And
foot.
The Iroquois tribes, predominantly the Tuscarora, but 2 others, they go north to join up with their cousins, the Mohawks and so on. But the Muskegon tribes, and there's a lot of Muskegon people ended up in Indian Territory. They got screwed by the U.S. government just like the
No.
Cherokees did. I even drove across the Muskegon River, I think, over in Oklahoma. That language group comes from the Carolinas. Now, the Seminoles end up speaking in Muskegon dialect, and they have cultural traits of, they have Anglo, Muskegon, and African cultural traits in their society.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it's like I mentioned growing up in New York City, the 2 Indians that I were exposed to were you had the Shinnecocks, right? Who they were black, right? But they were Shinnecock Indians. That's what they told me. And the other ones were Mohawks, who I met at AA meetings, who had come down to do construction and whatnot, and now we're trying to get off the sauce. So those are the only 2 Indians that I'd be familiar with as a New York City person growing up back then. So that's interesting, the whole idea of it.
The Washington Irving, author of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, one of the famous first American writer.
He his collected works run to over 900 pages. And I did have a copy of it, and he had for a while he lived and traveled as an advisor to some tribal people in what has become Georgia and Florida, and he relates the origin story of the Seminole tribe as told to him. And
here we go.
he kind of he gives it a nod, and he doesn't as blatantly advise the readers as Herodotus did that the Egyptians were probably full of it. But it was a fun story. So I'll kind of paraphrase it here. The legend only runs to about 1,000 words. The Great Spirit created man, and the first man he created was the black man.
What?
Okay, that's according to the Seminole origins legend.
Right.
The eldest brother of the 3 progenitors of the 3 races of mankind was the black man.
That's right, we the gods.
He was the older brother.
We the gods, son.
And the Great Spirit loved him, but he thought he could do better.
Oh.
So he created the red man.
Oh my God.
So this is like, I guess,
this is the most offensive creation story yet.
Right. So the black Seminole, he's like the S1000. The red Seminole, he's like the S2000.
Oh man.
And the Great Spirit loves the red man too, but he thinks he can do better.
Oh,
so he creates the white man,
oh.
which I guess is the S3000. Right?
That was Yakub. Yakub made the white man anyway.
So the brothers all want to know how they should order their society. So they go before the Great Spirit. And he said, well, I will bestow gifts upon you all, you know, so that you will know, your place in society. Because at the time of Irving's visit, apparently Seminole society was very caste-oriented.
No.
Where there were like racial divisions for like who did what.
What?
I mean, nothing like today where certain people get all the DMV jobs. I'm
right.
sure,
Yeah.
But
damn.
So the Great Spirit lays out a chest with 3 gifts in it, and according to tradition in North America, amongst most tribes, the youngest person gets to choose their gift first. So that would be the white man, since he was the younger brother of man.
Well, it's not the Chinese man, for
and,
sure. They don't do that.
He looks in there and he sees the 3 gifts, and he takes out the paper.
Oh.
And he becomes responsible for all the great inventions that make life easy. And these are stipulated as consisting primarily of writing, gunpowder, and whiskey.
There you go. Right, so you see the priorities. Right. Right.
So, all right. So then the middle brother, he comes to the chest, and there's 2 gifts left. And of course, he takes up the tomahawk.
Yeah.
He says, I will be the warrior.
That's
I
right.
will be the warrior, right? And he bounds away, perhaps even happier than his little brother with his paper. And then the eldest brother comes up to the chest, and he looks in, and there's only a shovel.
Oh, gee. Oh my God.
Well, I guess I got to do all the work for these 2, right? So
Damn.
he takes out the shovel, and this is his lot in life. You know?
That's fucked up. Yeah, man.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah, it's alright. He's just relating. You don't believe that. He's just relating what the Seminoles.
So,
Wow.
and I don't know how many times Irving spilt his inkwell while he was laughing trying to write this down.
Well, he didn't want to
I
get.
can imagine it was more than once.
He didn't want to get his skull caved in. So anyway.
Okay, so the Third Seminole War, the first chief of the Seminoles that I see, he's Scottish.
Right.
You look at him, this dude's Scottish. That's why I'm interested in this book on the Middle War that you have, because the first chief of the Seminoles that I ever laid eyes on was in an Old West history book about great chiefs. And one of the great chiefs of the American Indians, they got shipped off to Oklahoma Territory, was the man who could not be defeated in the third and final Seminole War, Billy Bowlegs,
Right.
who looked a whole lot like the Godfather of Soul, James Brown.
Oh damn.
I mean, almost
Right.
like it could be like his daddy, right? I mean, it was a black and white photo, and this dude was shining.
Yeah,
okay? I mean,
yeah.
he was, but the group of people he was with, they were very mixed.
Right.
You know, it was everybody was in that. So, now that you have cartridge rifles in the 1850s, it's even harder to hunt down guys out in the jungle.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And it
they
is a
make
jungle
a
down
deal
there.
with Billy Bowlegs, who's kind of like an Apache figure, kind of like a Geronimo.
Right.
Which is interesting because they end up shipping Geronimo to Florida
Yeah, that's
to
right.
try to kill him because he's comes from a high, dry climate.
Yeah.
All right. And they send Billy Bowlegs out to Oklahoma, and well, he agreed to do it on one condition, that they would give him 50 African American slaves
Oh.
to attend him in his exile out in Oklahoma, which kind of tells you he was probably a boy sitting around the campfire when the elders were telling Washington Irving the story of the origins of man and the Great Spirit.
The history is not so simple. It's nuanced. It's complex. It's very human. Anyway. All right, cool. That's we wrapped that up pretty good. Yeah.